Our next speaker is speaking to us about enabling smart regulation, tools and the software for crypto asset companies. Carel de Jager, the research group leader at the CSIR for the DLT and blockchain. Carel, over to you. Thanks.
Thank you, Fifi. So I know it's a graveyard shift. So, wait, where's my clicker? There it is. So I'm giving away some free Bitcoin to those with fast fingers. There's a private key for you, so you can scan it. Whoever's first wins, good luck. I'll keep you there for a couple of slides, all right? So, assuming it's already taken, it's quite amazing what then just happened. You know, we are all here because we know the potential of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies for censorship, resistant, transparent, open, free, borderless, instant transactions. And we know the potential of that. So yes, Bitcoin is amazing. It's amazing for non-discriminatory financial inclusion. But there's a problem. I could have just transferred, it was lunch money that I transferred to you, but it could have been billions of dollars. And we know that there was no KYC process. It could have flowed across borders, and it could have been for an illicit transaction. Who knows? It was completely synonymous. There was no censorship. So we love it. We love that about Bitcoin, but censorship is also a good tool. You know, there's some things that humans are not supposed to do. All right, the sale of illicit goods and services, for instance, and censorship is a brilliant tool to control that. So if you open a website today and you're going to try and sell illicit substances, the very first thing that's going to happen is your payment gateway is going to shut you down, long before law enforcement even gets involved. All right, and that's a good thing. We can't argue with that. So what can we do with Bitcoin? How can we control crime? Well, there's a lot of things. We don't necessarily need censorship because the blockchain is transparent. We love that about Bitcoin as well. It's auditable, and no permission or application is required to transact. But also, no permission is required to audit. Any one of us in this room can be an auditor of the blockchain. And if you have a lot of intelligence, or you can gain a lot of intelligence with some really smart software, and that's what we do at the CSIR. So why do we need regulation? For the things that I just mentioned, and also for a few other things. We need to prevent another FTX at all costs. Please, let's not go through that again. And we need to monitor VASPs, virtual service provider costs. We need to make sure that they have proof of liabilities and reserves. That's how we prevent another FTX. We need to do transaction analytics. We need to comply with the travel rule and custody standards. We need that. Because without custody standards, you can't get insurance. That's just one of the reasons why we need custody standards. Because an insurer don't know how to assess risks. So no one is insured in this space. That's not very good, right? We need to make sure that the revenue service gets their cut. We need to encourage decentralization, all right? So FATF just recently greylisted South Africa. One of the guidelines for recommendation 15 was that they also hold accountable those with administrative keys to dApps, to smart contracts. So if you have smart regulation, then what will happen? Well, people will make sure that they are not decentralized in name only. They will actually build decentralized applications, and that's what we all want, right? So it can catalyze growth. If there's clear boundaries, if we have good regulation, we will attract a lot of VASPs to South Africa. They will set up shop there in beautiful Cape Town. I can guarantee you that. So this is what I call the regulatory stack that we currently sit with. There is the global watch bodies, FATF, the Bank of International Settlements, IMF, the World Bank, and they go on and on. They provide guidelines, issue guidelines to our local regulators. These are the SARS, the SARB, FinServ, the whole IFWG, as well as law enforcement like, for instance, the NPA. And then right at the bottom is the industry. Okay, so the industry is the vast retailers, Pick and Pay, the financial service providers, those kind of things. So I see the CSIR operating somewhere in between, overlapping a little bit with the regulator as well as the industry, and providing things like custody solutions. The travel rule. Travel rule is currently very, very fragmented. Now, travel rule can't work. The travel rule solution cannot work if it's fragmented. Exchange control analytics, proof of reserve, proof of liabilities, those kind of things. So, speaking towards the greylisting of South Africa, where does virtual assets play a role? it's mainly with regards to recommendation 15, which is a recommendation aimed towards new technologies like fintech and virtual assets. And just a high-level summary of what they recommended to South Africa is that VASP are accountable institutions for AML and terrorist financing under the FIC Act. So well done, FSCA. That was done last year. Then also blockchain analytics. That's what I highly recommend, the travel rule solution. And then a very, very dystopian thing, which I won't talk about today, but that's limiting spending via multisig. So how do we do that? How do we regulate via a research, development, and innovation approach? From the CSIR, we identified 4 areas. First, it's digital asset surveillance engine. It's an analytics platform. Know your transaction, KYT, know where it comes from. It's very, very easy, actually. Not that easy, but it's relatively easy to determine whether a transaction is, there was an attempt at money laundering, or an attempt at a sanction evasion, or an exchange control evasion, or a tax evasion, if you have smart analytics. And secondly, it's a travel rule and exchange controls, knowing how much value is crossing our country borders. Thirdly, is digital asset custody products, and then technical R&D, development of the CBDC, investor risk assessments, those kind of things. So let's go through them. Custody is crypto asset custody. As I said, it's a bottleneck towards widespread adoption. There are no real best practices. There are no standards. There are best practices. There are no standards for custody. Now, I won't name names, but there's large exchanges that you guys use that keep their cold storage in a single key wallet. All right? We don't want that. We want standards. They must know how to do it, how to protect their assets. And custody is not an easy problem. It's incredibly difficult. And if you leave it up to the custodian to do that, they're going to mess it up. We need standards so that the insurer can know how to assess the risk of someone who keeps crypto. And we've seen lots of issues of ways that it can go wrong. I don't know if you guys watched Rodrigo, the documentary. That's a pretty good one of how custody can go wrong. Travel rule and exchange controls. If you withdraw your Bitcoin from one exchange and you send it to another exchange, the 2 exchanges need to communicate with each other. They need to know whose identity where it originates from, whose identity where it ends up from. All right, that's standard. It's done in conventional finance, CFI, and there's currently no industry standard for crypto. There is a couple of products out there, but as I mentioned, it's fragmented, and then it cannot really work. So, and then the big one that we're focusing on is a source of intelligence for on-chain analytics and on-chain data at the CSIR. So there are currently international players. We know about them. We know Chainalysis. We know CipherTrace. These guys are big. These guys are expensive. Not always affordable to your local average South African custodian. All right. So what do? They just don't do it. And I believe that we might be one of the only organizations in the Southern Hemisphere that's now also focusing on this. And it can be a strategic asset to the state, this type of data, all right? I believe that we should not go to the Northern Hemisphere to find out what our transaction intelligence is. We can build up the data source ourselves, and then we can assess operations of local costs in real time. We can track the volume for assets, as an example. We can implement the travel rule and the exchange controls and all of those kind of things. We can maintain local sanctioned lists, addresses that pose a risk to South Africa. I myself have been helping several people, with that's been involved in small little pyramid schemes and scams in South Africa, which is not on the radar of the big intelligence sources like Chainalysis and so on. So I believe we desperately need it. In order to build such a thing, you need a group of highly, highly specialized skills. These are not only developers and engineers, but it's also machine learning and artificial intelligence specialists, which is all under the same roof at the CSIR. So apart from the free Bitcoin that I gave you guys earlier, I've also handed out a handful of business cards in the last 2 days. And on each of them, there's been Bitcoin. So, and I checked it, and there's only one person who figured it out and took it. So if you have a business card of mine, now's the time. Just know that we're going to track you. So all those addresses on the left-hand side is the ones on the business cards. So just be careful what you do with that Bitcoin. And we'll definitely try to figure out who you are and label that address. Here you can see this is our wallet that we use at the CSR. and now it's in the public domain. So while it's very liberating, it's also a bit scary, to be honest. There you can see where it originated from and how it's flowed through time. All right, so this is the type of work that we do. This is coming straight from our analytics engine. So another reason why we would like to see engineering skills at the level of the regulator is this is a great case study, which was actually part of the Chainalysis Crypto Crime of 2022 report, came from there, in which Dutch authorities recovered ransomware from obviously a hacker that used Bitcoin. And they figured out that this guy released the decryption key to his hacking software before the transaction was actually confirmed and included in a block. All right, and the Dutch authorities managed to actually decrypt a large volume of victims' data by spending a transaction, sending it to the hacker, and then double spending it back to themselves before the transaction was included in a block. Now, I think this is brilliant, all right? And I wish that all authorities in the world could have this level of skills in order to protect their users, because ultimately, that's what we want. So the CSIR, we are a state-owned entity under the authority of the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Technology. We are a neutral partner to the government, and therefore we are building these this source of intelligence. Our only mandate is to increase the capability of the state. There's no hidden agendas. We're not after a for-profit. We're not a for-profit organization. We follow a rigorous academic approach to research and development, and our human capital includes global recognized experts all around the world. And all of us know that the demand for DLT and blockchain skills far outstrips the supply. And we are there, so we are available if any one of you wants to talk. Any questions? Thank you.